And we begin. We are we're not even in the middle, we're at the beginning of chapter 4. Last week we discussed the garments mostly. We discussed the garments of the soul, that in addition to the 10 faculties of the soul, there is also garments of the soul. We want to continue in that vein. We spoke about some beautiful things. We're not going to repeat any of them. Please go back, see our YouTube channel, and review what we learned. Some very, very nice sources from other places. Here we go. Now, what we said was that the garments are where the union between the person and Hashem takes place. In the garments is where the union between the person and Hashem takes place. The soul invests itself in the garments when the person is performing a mitzvah. I've shared this story before, but I'll share it again this time. When I was on Yeshiva Boy, I was a Yeshiva Boy in Miami. There was a yeshiva in South Beach with Rabbi Shapiro, who's actually a Clevelander. He's originally a Cleveland boy. Now he's from the big Rabbonim of Chabad. Anyway, so we would go on Mivtzayim, myself and my partner, and we got close to a certain guy, and we went to visit him in his apartment, and we learned with him, and we farbrang with him. And then, as we're leaving, we say, mitzvahs, you got to do mitzvahs. He says, I have my own way. I have my own connection. I find my spirituality in ways that work for me. So we're discussing on the way home, and my partner says, it's funny because as we were leaving, he gives us his email address and he gives us his phone number. And if he were to tell us like this, let's say my email address is bob123 at AOL in those days, .com. Yeah, or his phone number is 123-456-7890. And I would say to him, okay, that's nice. So then I'll call you. Let me just repeat the number to you, 098-765-4321. He would say, no, that's not correct. Why not? Because my number is 123-456-7890. I got it. 098-765-321-4130. No, you can't get a hold of me that way. I cannot be reached at the combination that you just said. I can only be reached in the combination that I gave you. So, aha. Why do we assume that Hashem is different? Why do we assume that when Hashem tells us his phone number, we can say, nice, thank you for sharing your phone number. I'll call you at a different number and I'll find you there. It doesn't work that way. Hashem can be found by us. We can reach Hashem in a specific way. Hashem tells us his phone number. Mitzvahs, Torah study, love Hashem, revere Hashem. These are the addresses at which Hashem can be found. Other than these addresses, Hashem is not available. Hashem is not in the ballpark. You can't call Wikipedia and Google and find God. You have to open the Torah. That being said, let's put this question as the overarching theme of today's lesson, where we will take 2 further steps into chapter 4. The overarching question is, why is it that Hashem's address is actual mitzvahs? Actual mitzvahs are physical things. How can Hashem be found in physical things? The Alter Rebbe addresses this directly later in Tanya, as we'll see, but it's relevant for us now because we are asking about, we're studying the transition, the translation of our soul's feelings. Like we spoke in the previous chapter, our intellect, our emotion, and we're going to translate it into tactical, tangible thoughts, words, and deeds. But that's where Hashem is found, not in the intellect and not in the emotion, only in the tactical, tangible thought, speech, and action. So you could say like this. We have to understand the following. To say that the thoughts of a person when he's grasping the Torah is a garment for the intellect of the soul, that's understood. Because the thoughts, we don't recognize a difference between intellect and thoughts. We understand thoughts to be intellect. We say, what is a person, where does a person intellectualize that's in his thoughts? However, if you're asking where does the love and reverence for Hashem translate into the tangible, you could say into your speech. Okay, fine. But usually, and the Alter Rebbe is telling us, it's in action, in our deeds, that our love and reverence for Hashem translates, can be found. How is that relationship to be explained? We don't see activity as loving or reverent. Activity is activity. Activity could be emotionless. Activity could be thoughtless, mindless, devoid of any intention. But that's where the love and reverence of Hashem becomes translated, becomes expressed. Says the Alter Rebbe, the explanation is obvious. Ki, because ahava, love of Hashem, he shoresh kol ramach mitzvahs aseh, is the root and the reason why you might perform any of the 248 commands of the Torah. Umimena hem nimshaches, from the love that you feel for Hashem, from the desire to connect to Hashem, from the yearning to be one with Hashem, that's where the act of the mitzvah will come from. Ubila ado, that's first of all. Secondly, ubila ado, without the love, yearning, and desire to be one with Hashem, ein lahen kiyum amiti. The mitzvahs have no real foundation. They have no real existence without the love to propel them, to animate them, to fuel them. Because we just now said, I could build a house with the intention to earn a living, or I could build a house with the intention to house my beloved. Same activity, very different intention. If I built a house in order to earn a living, and then I say to my beloved, here, you live there. The act of building does not eternally feed our relationship. It's separate and outside, apart from the relationship. But if the act of building itself was animated by my care and concern and kindness for my beloved, then forever and for all times, that act of building is giving and nourishing and sustaining and strengthening the connection that there is between myself and the one that I built for. In the example of a mitzvah, if I put a penny in the pushka, if I put the penny in the pushka because that's what I do every day, my hand did it, my mind and heart did not do it, so I'm obedient. Obedience is good. But have I fed my relationship? Have I nourished my relationship with Hashem? Does this act of giving carry me forward, bring me closer to Hashem? Does this act of giving have eternal effects on how I relate to my Creator? The answer is, if there is no yearning behind the act, then the connection is temporary. During the very act itself, there is a connection, of course, because I'm obeying. But when the act is done, the connection is gone. Caveat, side point, sidebar, footnote. From my perspective, from our perspective, when the act is over, the connection is gone. Obviously, Hashem sees everything in an eternal fashion. Hashem is outside of time. The mitzvah is outside of time. The mitzvah resides and resounds in heaven eternally. But as far as I am concerned, my neshama, in my body, the connection with Hashem ends when the act is completed. It has no real staying power. It has no true existence. Ki, that's because hamekayimam ba'emes, somebody who fulfills mitzvahs truly. What does it mean to truly fulfill a mitzvah? Who is such a person? What animates that person? He loves the name of Hashem. He yearns to cleave to Hashem truly and permanently. And we realize it is impossible to cleave to Hashem truly, other than through fulfilling the 248 commands of the Torah. Shehem ramach everin demalko kavyachol. Those mitzvahs are the limbs of the king, so to speak, as was explained elsewhere. Let's pause for a second. Why can I not simply love Hashem with my heart, with my mind? You're smiling. What do you think?
How many times do we hear about someone who says, I love God. In my heart, I really love God. So it's funny, we used to call those cardiac Jews because they never did anything, but it was all in their heart. So probably we know people like that.
But the question is a good one either way. If you love a human being, what builds the connection between the two people that are loving each other and yearning for each other and connecting with each other? Where's the connection built? In behavior?
It's in the giving, right? Like a parent to a newborn. I mean,
when
from behavior.
Behavior is a vehicle, but the bond, the connection is in the heart and mind. I do for a lot of people. Yeah, all everybody in the community. You have these organizations that you support and people that you help on a regular basis, and there's no relationship, there's no bond. It's just one of the things that became, whatever it is. They played on your guilty conscience long enough, or they sent you an email with a picture that was touching enough. Whatever it was, they got to you, and it becomes one of the projects that you support. You're helping, you're giving. There's no bond. We learned this previously, that in the human context, knowledge, das, is the foundation of the connection. What's happening in your mind and in your heart is the foundation of the connection. In a human context, that's possible. Between the creator and a creation, that's not possible. Do you know why? Of course you know why. Because we cannot truly know him. We only know things that are inside our context. We only know things that are inside our framework. We cannot know something that's outside our framework. We cannot know something that's beyond our intellectual grasp. We cannot know him. We yearn to know him. But our method of knowing doesn't apply, doesn't compute when we're talking about Hashem. we understand what he wants from us and for us, and we appreciate it. We yearn to be close to him because we value Hashem, his kindness, his greatness, his holiness. We don't know him. We can't know him. From our point of view, there is nothing about him to know, because there's nothing that is defined in any of the parameters that we can recognize. So there's a huge gap here. The way that Hasidus puts it is, we're not on the same scale. The lover and the beloved are not at all on the same scale, and therefore the relationship cannot take place on the conscious, mindful level. That's not where the true connection takes place. That's where the yearning takes place. That's where the reaching takes place. It has to. If there is no intellectual and emotional reaching, then the behavior of the mitzvah, as we said, has no true lasting power. We reach with our minds, we yearn with our hearts, we connect with our actions. In a letter, the previous Rebbe writes an analogy. You'll be able to find this? An analogy for this idea where the commandment creates the relationship between us and the Creator with whom we have nothing in common. We'll read it. It's a little bit long, but it's quite delightful. Ubiyur davar zeh. I want to explain something to you. I'll read it and translate it. And if you have any comments, questions in the middle, please feel free to jump in. Biyur davar zeh, I want to explain something to you. Hine kol ha-mitzvahs, every mitzvah, all of the mitzvahs, hare mitzad ha-mitzave baruch hu, from Hashem's perspective, hare kulam shavim, they are all equal. And he brings a source for that. Amar Rabbi Abba, from the Medrash Yalkut Shmoni, he says, don't sit and try to figure out which mitzvah is more valuable than the other. Why? The tam hadavar, the reason is, the fisheschar mitzvah hi ha-mitzvah atzma, is because the reward for each and every mitzvah is really the mitzvah itself. That's the truest reward. Although some mitzvahs, the Torah describes one kind of punishment if you don't do it, and a different mitzvah, the Torah describes a different kind of punishment if you don't do it. Or there's a mitzvah that where the Torah prescribes a certain reward if you did it, and another mitzvah has a different reward if you did it. That's not the true reward. That's not the true reward. The true reward is the mitzvah itself. And this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe is going to explain to us in his inimitable way. V'inyone al pi chasidus. Let's explain this notion that the reward for the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. We'll explain this according to Chasidus. In a mitzvah hiloshin tzavsa v'chibur. A mitzvah is from the language of connection and bonding. The ha'oiseh mitzvah, one who performs a mitzvah, mischaber, becomes connected, im ha'atzmus baruch hu, with the very essence of the Holy One, blessed be He. Shehu ha'mitzaveh hatzivoy hahu. He is the one who commanded that mitzvah. V'zehu schar mitzvah mitzvah. That's what it means. The reward for the mitzvah is the tzavsa, is the bond that is created through the performance of the mitzvah between the commander of the mitzvah and the one fulfilling the command. The fact that you're able to connect with the essence of the Infinite One, who is commanding that command, zehu schare, that is the greatest reward. You'll live a long life, that's nice, but in the meantime, I'm connected to Hashem. You'll be blessed with good crops in the springtime, that's nice, but in the meantime, I'm connected to Hashem. All the other stuff is a natural physical consequence. We're very excited and very happy that those things happen, but the most important element of the most important consequence of the mitzvah is that we are bonded, we're connected to Hashem, and that's what our souls yearn for. Let's get some understanding of this idea through a worldly analogy. Ish pashut biyeser, you have a very simple person. Hagam, even though ki ein binois loy klal b'mailas hachachma v'seichel, he is so simple, he doesn't even appreciate the value of scholarship and intellectualism and academia. He does not even realize how far he, the simpleton, is from the vast beauty and tremendous advantage of wisdom. Because, knowing that you don't know is also a level of knowledge. And this simpleton doesn't even have that. He doesn't even know what he doesn't know. This simple person, he doesn't even know what he doesn't know. All of his awareness, all of his interests, all of his framing of his life, because we all frame our lives based on our intellectual maturity and emotional maturity. We experience something and we study it and react to it through the framework that we have created because of our learning and because of our experiences. This person's framework of life, how he processes his life, is only through physical things, the basest of all of the senses. He goes from tasty food to tasty food. Yeah. Things that he desires, or his other regular activities, farm work, he knows about earth, he knows about animals, he judges everything through that framework. The kol hafloesav v'hasharesav him ach v'rak be'erechim ko'elu. He gets excited, he perceives things only in comparison with those worldly areas of his worldly expertise. Like, for example, if he wants to describe one thing that's very far from another thing, something that's much, much greater, he'll say, it's like lemon meringue compared to dry toast. That's his framework. That's how he perceives the world. Ubemela, so automatically, move on, we understand exactly how much relationship he has to the world of intellect, scholarship, and academia. Shehu Baal HaChochma. Sorry. Now we can understand. Then let's try that sentence again. Ubemela, so automatically, move on, we understand. Ad kama sheyesh lehavon v'ashara b'mailas hechacham. How much this simple man will appreciate the level of the true scholar, the true intellect, the true academic. Shehu Baal HaChochma, he is the master of wisdom. This simpleton does not grasp the whole framework. He doesn't understand the world that the wise man lives in. He exists in a different place. And we see this obviously and clearly, asher ish pashut davke, that it's this simple man specifically, yesh le bittul pnimi el hechachma umaylas chacham, who is capable of being utterly humble in the presence of the wise man and the scholar. Ve'oifen bituloi, even the manner of his humility, the substance of his humility is more profound than would be the humility of a minor scholar in the presence of a major scholar. Why? Because this simpleton, the substance of his humility is like this. Hu batel betachlis beheder tfisas mokim klal. He recognizes that in the world of the scholar, he does not exist. The scholar lives in a world of learning, The scholar lives in a world of thoughts, and he says to himself, I, the simpleton, I don't even approach that world. I don't exist in the world of the scholar. Not chas v'sholem. Wait a minute, hold on. Hainu she'ein ze bittul b'mtzius. That is not just my ego is humble. That's not even that I set myself aside because of the greater scholar. That's not, that's a certain level of humility for sure. It's good, it's healthy, but that's not the ultimate level of humility, because here the person says, I am something, just not as great as the other. So I'll set myself aside, my something aside, in favor and in deference to the greater scholar. That's nice. But the simpleton, from his perspective, when he's entering the world of the scholar, there's nothing to set aside. He does not see himself anywhere in the picture when he enters the world of the scholar. I'm sorry. Okay, we're gonna skip the second paragraph on the page here. It's okay. It's a quote from the Rambam about the planets to help aid with this analogy, but I think it'll confuse us more than help us. Next paragraph. This sense that the simpleton does not exist in the world of the scholar, can only be experienced by the truly simple person. He doesn't consider himself even human. Even human compared to the great scholar. Yeah? The same is true about the scholar's perspective. The scholar does not find the simpleton to even exist in his world. The simpleton has no place in the world of the scholar. It's a true thing. Ein ze chas v'sholem, not, God forbid, that he is rude to him, mevataloi, he throws him down, he belittles him, or he pushes him away, God forbid. No, that's not what we're saying. That's forbidden. You're not allowed to do that. And it's a terrible characteristic if a person does that. That's a terrible, that's not good midos, that's not good character. It's just that this simple man, because he does not engage on any level in the world of thought, scholarship, academia, there's no commonality between these two people, to the point where you couldn't even say that they're the same species. You understand that there's a little bit of hyperbole here, yeah? But this is a real thing. And here's the point, the most beautiful and important part of this analogy. When the wise man will command the simpleton to perform some errand on his behalf, all of a sudden the scholar has created the existence of the simple man. He has given him cause to exist, both for the simple man himself as well as in the scholar's mind, because the scholar has given him a reason to be in the world of the scholar. I need something from you, you can do something for me. Because through this command, where the wise man is commanding the simpleton to do something, he has emerged from his non-existence, and he has entered the realm of, hey, I exist. I have value here in this world. But in addition to that, this command also brings about a bond, a relationship between the great and elevated scholar and this simple, unlearned person. because the simpleton can fulfill the will of the great and elevated scholar. Im kein muvan. From here we understand asher be'iloi zeh shenasai de'atzivoy, that in this elevation, in this lofty experience, this uplifting experience for the simple man of fulfilling the command of the great scholar, there are 2 points. Number one, the first one is there is mitziyusay shal hamitzova. There is all of a sudden value in the existence of the one who received the command. The simple man, all of a sudden, wow, I can do something. I can serve the great scholar. I can provide a service at least. I have some value in the world of the scholar. And the second one is hischaberus hamitzave v'hamitzuva. And the second thing is the relationship that is now being created between the commander and the commanded. Ein hevdel klal ma sheyiyatzivoi. And it really makes no difference whatsoever what that command is. It could be fetch my briefcase, and it could be build a house, print my book. Doesn't matter. It could be something very elevated and lofty. It could be something very simple. The most important element here is that the wise man commanded it and the simple man fulfilled it. That's what it means, that the reward for the mitzvah is the product of the mitzvah itself. Because the very command itself provides existence, provides substance to the simpleton, to the lower one, the smaller one. In this case, that's us, the created beings. And provides for us a way of connecting with the Creator, who is completely outside of our world, outside of our framework, outside of our context. Because Hashem commanded and we obey, that does 2 things for us. Number one, it overrules the qualitative gap between the 2 levels of existence. Hashem's existence is true, eternal, unchanging. Our existence is tenuous, dependent, ever-changing. It's not the same scale. In comparison, you might say, we don't exist at all. There is a human being who lives on this earth, and there's a human being that lives in a film. Are they both real? The one in the film is, it's real. You can see him, but is he real? It's fair, it's safe to say the human being on the film really does not exist. That's not a human being. The human being who lives on the face of the earth, now that's a human being. But there is a human being on the film. It looks like a human, it behaves like a human. He does the same thing every time you turn it on, but so that's one level of it. That's the, you see, same thing with a similar thing between Hashem and his creation. Hashem exists without any help, without any question, without any doubt. There is no question by Hashem. To be or not to be is not a question. The question to be or not to be is something that Hashem invented from his own true existence. And we live precariously on the cusp, on the edge of to be or not to be. So do we really exist? Qualitatively, do we take up any space in the world of true existence?
I don't want to be impertinent, but how do we know Hashem doesn't ask himself, should I exist or not? How do we know that?
It says, Ani Havaya Lo Shanisi. I, God, I never change.
So maybe
And assume that it means I, God, never even considered making any change.
Okay. Thank you.
How do we make up for the gap in qualitative existence? We don't have to make up for the gap in actual existence. We're not going to try to change our existence so that we become a true and real existence the way Hashem exists. It's not a thing. We're not reaching for that. But we want to bridge the gap between, we want to bridge the gap in quality. We would like to play a role in God's world. It's only possible through the act of a mitzvah. If I can do something for Hashem, if I love Him, it doesn't carry any weight in His world. If I love Him and do for Him, that creates, firstly, our qualitative existence, and secondly, it creates a real bond between us and Hashem, like the simpleton and the scholar. One time during a JLI course, we gave the analogy of the super fan and the superstar. Yeah. It was from a golf outing. There was a kid who wasn't well, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation, gave the young man an opportunity to be the caddy of his hero, the golf player. The super fan, his life was golf, and his hero was this guy who didn't even know he existed. But because he had an opportunity to carry the golfer's bag and stick the pin in the ground, or whatever it is that that caddies do for their bosses, that forms a relationship. There's an actual relationship between the two of them. There's a give and take. There's a service provided. It's a similar thing with the mitzvah. The mitzvah gives us an opportunity to stand out and to connect with Hashem, even from our place of tenuous existence. We can touch Hashem in the real place of real existence. We'll borrow for a minute from chapter 35 of Tanya, just to address the question, why is it, in fact, that a soul that is a veritable piece of God, and that soul loves and reveres Hashem and reaches out and serves with all the depths of its mind and heart, all of it, the depths of its intellect, the power of its intellect, and the depth of its emotions, why is that soul still qualitatively not significant in the world of the one true being? Isn't it worth something? The soul is, after all, a veritable piece of God. It is a piece of divinity. Shouldn't it count for something? So we'll borrow from chapter 35, and it says like this. Vihine. The Alter Rebbe there gave an analogy of a flame that shines over the head of every Jew. And there, the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 35, like this. The explanation of this mashal is, why is the Shechina, Shehim shel er Shechina leir haner, why is the presence of Hashem compared to the light of a candle, she'enim meir v'nechaz v'sfil b'shemen, which cannot stay next to the candle without oil, without fuel? V'kach ein hashchina sheira al gufa adam shenimshal l'psila el d'ma'aser tev dafke. Why does it take mitzvahs specifically to attach the presence of Hashem to the body that is likened to the wick? Why is the divine soul, which is a veritable piece of Hashem, why is that not enough to attract Hashem's presence? Says the Alter Rebbe, it's mevuar u'chamaskil. We'll pay attention to it for a little bit. We'll understand it clearly. Kihine, because nishmas ha'adam, the soul of man, this divine spark, afilu tzaddik gomer, even if that person is utterly righteous, that means he has not done anything to diminish the soul's connection to Hashem. He has not done anything to block the soul's influence in his life. There is no blockage. The soul is free to express its divine self. Oivet Hashem b'yira, he serves Hashem with fear, reverence, that means emotion. V'yahava b'tainugim, all the pleasures of his life he gets from Hashem, from Torah, from mitzvahs. That means there is a depth of love and emotion connecting him to Hashem. The ruach of his life, that's the definition of the life of a tzaddik. The life of a tzaddik is not on the level of nefesh. The life of a tzaddik is on the level of ruach. Nefesh is a bodily life. The tzaddik doesn't live a bodily life. The tzaddik lives a ruach life, an emotional life of love and reverence for Hashem. And that's why the fact that the body of the tzaddik died really has no effect on the life of the tzaddik, because even when he was in his body, he wasn't living a bodily life. He is a soul person, not a body person. Even when he lived in a body, he was not a body person. He's a soul person. Why is this soul that shines so powerfully in the life of this tzaddik, this person, why is that not enough to attract the presence of Hashem? Why does it have to be physical mitzvahs? Afal Pikein, says the Alter Rebbe, nevertheless, the soul cannot surrender its very existence to be united and subsumed in the light of Hashem, literally. To become utterly one with Hashem to the ultimate degree. Rak, instead, the soul needs to remain an individual entity by himself, separate from Hashem, Yirei Hashem v'yehavai, who is fearing Hashem, who is revering Hashem and loving Him. That's the nature of a soul. The nature of the soul is Hashem created an other who will serve, an other who will choose of his own volition to invite Hashem into his world and to unite himself with Hashem in the physical context. The soul has to be apart from Hashem, and therefore the soul can never truly be one with Hashem to the ultimate degree. Masha'in kein ha-mitzvahs. So that's the soul. But mitzvahs, on the other hand, shehim retzonai yisbarich, which they are the actual will of Hashem. They are the actual will of Hashem. Yeah, mitzvahs. That's what Hashem wants. That's His will. And so on and so forth. By doing a mitzvah, so we'll skip a little bit and we'll go down to the bottom of the paragraph. You can come back and read it later. It's on the source sheet. Masha'inkin ha-mitzvahs. Mitzvahs shehem penimius retzoinoi. They are the innermost will of Hashem, the truest, most unadulterated will of Hashem. Ve'ein sham hester panim. There is no concealment at all of the divine will of Hashem Himself when we're talking about in the mitzvahs. Hashem's presence does not have to be hidden inside of the mitzvahs, the way Hashem's presence has to be hidden inside of something that was created. Everything created lives because Hashem is clothed inside of them. Hashem is there. Hashem's light and life is invested in every created being in a hidden way, in a concealed way, so that they might live, so that they might exist. But Hashem's presence has to be hidden, has to be concealed, or those things will cease to exist in their independent way. But in a mitzvah, there's no concealment. Hashem's light is there. Hashem's will, His presence is there openly without any concealment in the mitzvah. Hashem says, this is me. This is what I want. This is what I do. The mitzvah is the place where a person can align his own self, his will, his behavior, his actions with unmasked divinity, the unconcealed presence of Hashem. In this world, the only place where Hashem's light is really available without any mask, without any concealment, is in the act of a mitzvah. There is no other place. There is no other place. The Western Wall is a mask. The Western Wall is the curtain. Lehavdil, to separate a million times, but by way of analogy, the curtain that hid the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Every physical object is such a curtain, hiding the presence of, quote unquote, so to speak, Lahavdil Aleph Avdalos, the wizard. Hashem is there, but very hidden behind curtains and cloaks, except in a mitzvah. So when the Alter Rebbe would learn Chumash, Gemara, The Alter Rebbe would say, says the Gemara, asks the Gemara answers, and then Rashi explains, Tosfos explains. When the Alter Rebbe would learn halacha, that means actually the mitzvah. What am I supposed to do? The Alter Rebbe would say, and what does Hashem want? The Gemara says, the Gemara explains. Rashi says, Rashi explains. Halacha, and what does Hashem want? Because the actual mitzvah, the mitzvah is the actual want of Hashem. Okay, we'll go back now to chapter 4. Any questions, comments, thoughts, or theories before we take another baby step forward? So let's go back to chapter 4. V'hayira, we just now said that love is the cause and the root of every positive mitzvah observance. V'hayira, and fear, hishoirish l'shasa loisasa, will be the root to the observance or the avoidance of all the 365 prohibitions. Ki, why should a person who fears Hashem or reveres Hashem, why should that lead him to observe the 365 prohibitions of Torah? Ki yare limred b'melech malchei amlach makadosh baruch hu. He's afraid to rebel against the king. What does it mean to be afraid to rebel against the king? There are many levels of fear. The lowest level of fear is I'm afraid to get punished. Yeah? For those who serve Hashem from a place where I'm afraid to get punished, then you have to have the 11th command. The 10 commandments are famous. The 11th command is thou shalt not get caught. If you're worried about being punished, okay, that was a joke. A person, it's not wrong to start your service of Hashem from a place of, I realize that if I sin, I will be punished. It's not wrong to start your service there, to start to serve Hashem from that perspective. But there are deeper perspectives. There are more mature perspectives. Among them is, I don't want to rebel against the king because I don't want to be separated from the king. I love the king, and therefore I want to be connected with him. And if I disobey, I will take myself away from that connection. The king, let's say, we'll use the same analogy we used before. You have the wise man and the simpleton. The wise man says to the simpleton, do me a favor, bring me coffee, but don't put milk in it. Or bring me coffee, yeah, hang out here, you'll make the room warm, you'll provide the coffee, but don't make noise. You'll disturb the discussions. If the simpleton goes around hacking and banging and making noises, then the wise man loses his connection to the simpleton loses his connection to the wise man, and eventually the simpleton disappears from the world of the scholar. I have no use for him anymore. There's no more relationship between them. There's no more bond between them. And each one goes back to his own world. The scholar retreats into his lofty world, and the simpleton evaporates from that world completely. That's what we want? God forbid. We want to stay relevant in the world of God. So we are afraid to rebel. If we rebel, we will disappear from our connection to Hashem. To an extreme level, we have an example of this. The Alter Rebbe was imprisoned, and the Alter Rebbe was charged with all kinds of things. And one of them, and he was interrogated for them. 27 questions, I think. It's recorded in a pamphlet, the interrogations of the Alter Rebbe. And one of the questions the Alter Rebbe was asked was, are you connected with Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov? Are you connected to the Baal Shem Tov? The Alter Rebbe said, no, I'm sorry. The Alter Rebbe said, yes, absolutely, connected to the Baal Shem Tov. Later, it was revealed that the Alter Rebbe knew that he could just say, no, I'm not connected. I have no association with a man, and they would have let him go. It would have eased his predicament considerably if he would just say, I'm not associated with the Baal Shem Tov. But the Alter Rebbe did not want, even for a moment, and even only in verbs, in words, in spoken, in speech, to disconnect himself from the Baal Shem Tov. Similar to what the Alter Rebbe says in other places, that a Jew, nishter vil or nishter ken. Chassidus says in other places, a Jew, not only is he doesn't want to, he's not capable of consciously tearing himself away from God. And that's why if you push a Jew to the point where they become viscerally conscious of the fact that my next move will either connect me to God or separate me from God, the Jew will never choose, because not only doesn't want consciously or subconsciously, he cannot disconnect himself from God purposely, consciously. He's afraid to rebel against the king. Two levels. He's afraid of punishment, or he's afraid of being disconnected. Or there's a deeper level of fear, and that is he is so keenly aware of Hashem's presence. When you love somebody, or you revere somebody, or you appreciate somebody, and they are in the room, you would never do something that they consider despicable, that they consider loathsome. Doesn't matter. It could be the most insignificant thing. Yeah. My grandfathers apparently have a debate between them. One considers slurping a compliment to the chef, and one considers it utterly rude. So it depends whose house you're in. You either slurp or you don't slurp. Yeah, because in the one house you're not slurping. What's the matter? You don't like the soup? And I don't know if this is true. I'm too young to remember this, but this is what I've heard. And in the other house, you're slurping. What are you, kind of some kind of a peasant? Rabbi Yochanan wished his students, when he was on his deathbed, they said, Rebbe, bless us. And he said, I bless you that you should fear God as much as you fear humans. He said, Rebbe, come on. That's it? That's the extent of the blessing? And he said, well, it's not so simple. When there are humans in the room, you're on the best behavior. But when it's just you and God, you know? So fear of being ashamed. It's a funny story. I don't know if it's true, but there was the town thief. He used to climb down people's chimneys, steal, and climb back out the chimney, and nobody ever knew. And one night he's working. Nebuch, it's a Jewish guy, yeah? One night he's doing his work. He's climbing down people's chimneys. He's taking things, and he climbs down one chimney, and he pops out right in the rabbi's study. It's the middle of the night, and the rabbi's there with the candle burning, a sefer open in front of him. The Rav looks up, and he sees a Jew in his office, covered with dirt and soot and schmutz. He looks terrible. So the rabbi says, my friend, dear Jew, do you have a question for me? He says, yeah, Rebbe, one question. How do I get out of here? In Yiddish, it's much cuter. Wie kriegt von da nicht heraus? How do I crawl back out of here? Shame. He got caught by the Rav breaking and entering. Yeah, he's not worried the Rav is going to punish him. He's not worried the Rav is going to throw him in jail. He's embarrassed. He's embarrassed to have been caught doing something loathsome by somebody that he reveres and loves, even if he's not on the same level. Clearly, the thief and the Rav are not on the same level. We'll finish this paragraph so that we'll have a clean break, and we'll start from the next paragraph next time we meet. This man is afraid to rebel against Hashem, or perhaps a deeper fear than this, that he's embarrassed in the presence of Hashem to do something that Hashem considers loathsome. Imagine if you're in the palace of the king, and the king's arch enemy is there in the room together, your king and the enemy king, and you bring a cup of coffee for the enemy king. Very uncool. You carry the armor for the enemy king in the presence of your king. Very uncool. What are all the things that Hashem loathes and despises? They are things that are rooted in unholiness, in klipa, in the opposing side, the side that opposes holiness. They come from they receive their life from the poor choices of man here on earth, and the way that the forces of evil and darkness get a hold of a human being on earth to siphon some life off of his divine soul is when the human being makes a poor choice and engages in one of the prohibited activities, shasa mitzvahs leisasa. And that opens a door for the forces of unholiness to get a hold of some of your vitality, your divine fuel, and they use it to rebel further against the will of Hashem. A person who's conscious of this will be embarrassed in the presence of the king to provide fodder, to provide fuel for the enemy. Okay, thank you for joining. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you, God willing, next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Friedman.
Good to be back.
Thank you.
You.
Yeah.